We are in John 18, and Maji last week was speaking about the situation, what was happening in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's how it's. Yeah, okay. I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not going. The garden. Okay, let's say the garden. So, and we are right now right past that. So Jesus is taken away in a custody. He is, and I will go a little bit into that situation, but it's just to bring the atmosphere before we will go reading. So we knew that John was there, but Jesus was taken to the custody by a big crowd of people who came into the garden. And we heard last week from Maji that he wasn't surprised, and we had the great sermon about being in control and how Jesus was in control of the whole situation. He was replying, he was asking, he wasn't like hiding, he wasn't, scared. It looks like that he wasn't scared. He was facing the situation. And even when Peter get his sword out and cut one of the servant of the highest priest his ear, Jesus rebuked Peter. He took the ear and healed the man who came take him into custody. He was part of the team or the crowd of people who came. And it is very interesting in different gospels. It's a little more different notes what's happening there. But basically what happened is that most of the gospels said that the disciples disappear. There is even in one gospel said that one of the disciples have just a rope and he was naked under it. That's one maybe the custom or whatever. And somebody was dragged or tried to pull him from that. He got naked and he ran away naked. So imagine this is like very stressful situation. It's a night. There is a bunch of people coming into the garden, and everybody is like, Jesus, of course, Margie said Jesus was in control, but there was a lot of chaos going on. There was, we can see that Peter's cutting the ear. There was a lot of screaming and pushing, and this one disciple is like, his clothes are torn down. He's running naked, somewhere, into the garden. And another disciples like run away. And it's very chaotic, and Jesus is taken into custody. Jesus is in peace. Jesus is in control. But disciples are messed up. Like, I don't know if you can imagine or can close your eyes and feel like how it would be if you are following a man for 2.5 years, and you are with him every day, and you believe in him, and you see all these miracles, and you see all this stuff what's happened, and what he promised, his promises were coming true, and you were so excited about Jesus. This is a new Messiah. You really believe it. Now he's going into custody. Like your investment, you left your family, you did so much, you invest so much into the Jesus. That's what they thought. And everything was falling apart in that moment, in that night. Everybody was scared. Of course, Peter looked very bravery, he's cutting ear. Imagine there is a big crowd, you are just 12 of you. There's maybe, Maji was saying, I think she said 200 people or some a lot supposed to came there in the garden, and there was a big crowd of people. So I think Peter was pretty courageous. If you think about it, he cut the ear of one of the most dangerous people in the crowd, like the assistant of the high priest. This wasn't a soldier, this wasn't a police, this wasn't a high priest guard. This was the assistants of a high priest. So it was like, he wasn't very important, and he was maybe on the side. But still, he showed his courage, right? In the chaotic situation. Because Peter was totally sure that Jesus is Messiah. He believed it. Few hours before, he was sitting in the supper with Jesus, and Jesus told him that you will deny me, and Peter, like one of you, or people will deny me, and you will scatter around. And Peter was like, no way that I will do. Even if everybody will do it, I will not do it. He was fully convinced about Jesus being Messiah. He believed it. He was willing to die for him. He was in that garden. He pulled that sword, and he was willing to die. There was no doubt that Peter was convinced and believed that Jesus was Messiah. Still, he ran away. That's how chaotic and dangerous it was. In the same supper, a few hours before, after these promises from Peter, I will never deny you, Jesus are saying to him, tonight, before the rooster will 3 times make a noise. Sing? Crow? Crow? I thought the raven crow. Crow, that you will deny me. I think that was, maybe Peter forget it. I don't know what was happening in his head. Maybe he didn't even listen because he was so excited about Jesus. It's obviously that the disciples were not listening to Jesus in this last hour, because Jesus is saying that what is going to happen to him. But everybody was really surprised. Everybody was shocked. Everybody was, scared. And I think it's very natural. And so we are coming right now into this situation. Disciples run away. Jesus is taken by the guard, taken to Annas, not ananas, that's pineapple, but Annas, that's a father-in-law of the high priest, or family of the high priest. And so he's taken there, and we're reading, and we're going to read from John 15, continue. Simon Peter and another disciples were following Jesus. There is this notice with other scriptures, other gospels don't say there is another disciples. And some theology people, they think if it was a Judah, the Iscariots, the one who convicted him, because he might have connection and known, or this might be a John himself to go with Peter and follow Jesus from distance. In other scriptures, in other gospels, they say that they were following him in a distance. Because this disciple was known to the high priest. He went with Jesus into the high priest courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciples, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. You aren't one of these men's disciples too, are you? She asked Peter. He replied, I'm not. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around fire they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. So now, the second scene of this story is from the chaotic garden. Jesus is taken away. Peter's following from distance. He's coming with another disciple who know the high priest. They're entering the gate. They're entering the property of the high priest brother, or still high priest courtyard, and he went there, and he make a way for Peter to get in, and Peter is warming next to the fire. The first question when he enter, or where he's there, is this servant lady asking him, do you know Jesus, right? You were with him, you are his disciple. And Peter like, no, I'm not. And different gospels describing the little bit different answers, or it's recorded with different words. And in some answers, you can feel anger, you can feel almost like Peter was upset, and like, he was, it looks like stubborn guy, and he was like, no way, I don't know this guy. Actually, this came a little later, but you can read emotions behind these words. It was very clear that Peter say no. So many believers think that, or many theology people and the books about it, and I heard sermon about this, say, yeah, Peter denied Christ because he was scared. And I'm not sure if he was scared when he got the ear of one of the servants of the high priest, and he was able to enter the place. He wasn't doubting the faith. What I think, and this is just my thoughts, I think Peter was confused. Like, what is happening? I'm fully believing Christ. I fully believe in Jesus. There is no doubt. There's something going on. And in the midst of this, somebody asked him, you following Jesus? Or you are the follower of Jesus? And his immediate answer is no. Not because he's scared. Not because he's like, hate Jesus suddenly. But he's confused. And we can continue reading. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. I have spoken openly to the world, Jesus replied. I always taught in a synagogue or at the temple where all the Jews came together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby slapped him in the face. Is this the way you answer the high priest? He demanded. If I said something wrong, Jesus replied, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me? Then Ananias sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked him, you aren't one of his disciples too, are you? He's denied and saying, I'm not. One of the high priest's servants and a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off challenged him. Didn't I see you with him in the garden? Again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, rooster began to crow. Wow, the things are escalating for Peter. I mean, what a bad day for Peter. Like, few hours before at the dinner, full of promises, full of hopes, full of like, yeah, I will wash, he almost didn't let Jesus wash his feet. He was so excited about what is going to happen. He was promising Jesus, like, I will never fail. Few hours later, he strike with the sword, what was against everything what Jesus was saying and doing. He ran away, then he crawled back to see what's happening with the guy who he following for 2.5 years. Now he denied him 3 times, as Jesus was predicted. I mean, that's a bad day. Did you find yourself in the story of Peter? Maybe you think about the times when you denied Jesus publicly. But I don't want you focus on that. Because sometimes we as a Christians, as believers, depending on which country we're born, but we are very radical. And we heard so many times from a scripture that if you denied God, if you denied Jesus, he will deny you in front of the Father. So even if you are scared or afraid, you are not going to deny him publicly. So if somebody asks you, you are a Christian, you are all afraid and you doubts and everything, but you say, yes, I'm a Christian. Really depends from what country you're coming. But it is not, and we all, if you are born and raised in a church, or if you go into church for a little bit, you already heard this story. And you know this is like a bad example. So nobody want to be like Peter. But I'm not telling about that type of denial. How about when God leading you into the different plans as you were thinking? How about the time when you thought, this is how it will go? With Jesus, with God, this is how we will do it. And suddenly, your life is changing. And it is not going as you foresee, as you imagine, as you thought God was leading you into that point. And you're standing in this position of, like, I'm confused. Like, I did everything for you. Like, I even stand up in front of the 200 people and I cut the ear of a guy. Like, I'm willing to die. That's the message what Peter's sending. He's not afraid of death. But he is in the midst of confusion because the things don't go as he planned. You know, Jesus, no, I'm not going there. But Jesus was doing, he said that by his word. It's like, I'm doing Father's will. Like, I'm doing what Father's asked me to do. I'm doing God's will. I'm sent, and whatever I do, whatever I say, I do what God asked me. I don't know if he, when he was a child, he was really, seeing himself on the cross hanging, and that was his dream, how he will be living. I very doubt it. I believe he followed God in the way how he led him. You can say, yeah, it was easy for Jesus. He has such a good connection. But we are called to that type of relationship with Father. And if till now everything goes your way, or the way how you imagine your life, I'm very happy for you. But at least for me, that's not the story. Life is not what I imagined when I was 13, 14. Because if that's true, I will be not in Slovakia. I was dreaming about one time, maybe when I will be very old, I will come back to the church who sent me as a missionary, and I will sit back there and nobody will recognize me, and I will have a big beard and big hair. That's true. Dream come true. No, I'm just kidding. And that was my dream, maybe on last years of my life, to come back to Slovakia as a retired missionary. But when everything was going right, everything was well, and everything was progressing on my mission field, I ended up to be in Slovakia. I felt like Peter, confused. What do you want from me, God? I can give you everything. I stood up for you. I make the stand. I use all my strength and all my power. In my case, I didn't cut the ear of anybody. Just saying. But it is not as I imagined as when I was a child. But that's what God is asking us to do. God is not asking us to live happy life for our own self. God is asking us, follow me. Jesus is asking his disciples, follow me. Do the will of the Father. What that is, it's different from a person to person. We can say we all building the kingdom. That's something what all of us do in different ways. You know, Peter's story has a happy ending. He became one of the most influential disciples. He opened door to Jews in Acts 6:8. He opened door for Samaritan church to be raised and grow. And in Acts 10, he brought the gospel to Gentiles. He was used, as Jesus was telling him, I will build a church on you. The same guy who were confused and afraid, and what we say in our language and what we read is he denied Jesus. And I always thought, what's the difference between Judah and Peter? They both denied him. The way how both of them, or how they deal with them, deal with the afterwards. Judah decided to go one way. Peter decided to go with disciples and pray. Seek God's will. He was disappointed. He was upset. He was afraid. They were hiding. The secret police and everybody, the guards and everybody was looking for disciples of Jesus. But I think the most, he was confused. And maybe you are also confused in the stage of your life. Maybe you're wondering, why is this going this way? Why this and why that? And you thinking in your mind, it's like, how many things I invest into the kingdom, how many sacrifices I did for Christ. Why it is not going my way? Because this is not what you signed for. You signed to build a kingdom and follow God, follow Jesus, to be his disciples, to be his followers. And I don't want to scare those of you who like life going perfect. And my life is good and perfect. But there is moments where I was disappointed. I was confused. And I always need to remind myself that this is not what I'm searching for. The happy, clappy life. But I'm searching to live in a God's will. And it's easy to say. Same like Peter in the dinner, Last Supper. It's like, I will never deny you. Even if everybody else will deny it, I will never. The way how we will never deny or be confused from the work of God is when we stay in his presence. The closest you are to God, the closest you are standing next to him, the less confusion will be in your life. Because maybe even in the moments when you will not understand at all, there will be answers. Maybe some answers we'll find out very late, or much later, but I believe that when we walk with Jesus, he's next to us. So I want to encourage you. It shouldn't be a sad sermon. I want to encourage you, no matter how you feel, no matter how confused you are, and you find yourself in a Peter's body. Jesus is there, and he will lead you into the Father's will if you stay with him.